Hello everyone, and welcome back to Occult Perspectives. So, had some time today, wanted to do a video discussing the topics of the cardinal directions, or you could refer to them as like the elemental directions in ceremonial magic, as well as circumambulation, clockwise versus counterclockwise. So before we get into like, if you're working, obviously with archangels, and when you're doing the cardinal directions, that's what I'm gonna assume for this video. Let's talk about the symbolisms of each direction first. So in most systems, and there's multiple systems for the elemental directions, and it's important to not get like too caught up on, there being a right or a wrong way. So traditional, like Golden Dawn system, they have their set directions for the elements. Shamanism, I think, has a different set of directions for the elements. And then different people use varying systems, which I'm going to explain in this video what I use now, and kind of show a visual. I'm actually going to use some toy dragons to kind of show you my reasonings for why I use the elemental setup that I do now. But north is typically going to be symbolic of earth. It's the place of darkness. So the north is typically earth, corresponding to the element of earth, physicality. Now, the east is traditionally air in ceremonial magic, but some people say that on a different level of reality, so that on the physical level of reality, it follows the seasons. If you go from east around clockwise back to the east in a full circle, you're going from spring, summer, fall to winter, and back to spring again. So if you change up the elements from the traditional Golden Dawn system, you're not working from like a seasonal standpoint anymore. You're working more from like an astral level of reality. At least that's what Universal Mastery, I think that's how he refers to working with the elements more on that astral level. So the east would be fire instead of equating it with the south or the high noon sun, or the season of summer as it would in the traditional elemental directions. But north is usually earth, place of darkness, like in a Masonic lodge, it's considered. The east is usually the place of light, and it would usually correspond to air, which corresponds to what? Wisdom, like intellectualism. The element of air is all about thoughts. It's about consciousness. It's about the intellect, all of these sorts of things. So the east corresponds to air in the traditional system. But it can also be seen as fire. It's seen as the place of initiation. It's the place of transformation. Usually in most traditions, the east is seen as the place of light. It's where you go to find light. But it's also the place where you become reconstructed through alchemy, through the trials and tribulations, right? Of that journey towards the light can often come, fraught with many difficult trials and things of that nature. So the east is also kind of this place of danger. I see it because, and if you look at the lore of like the Lord of the Rings, I know it's fiction, but I think there are some profound truths in it. The hobbits go to the east to Mordor, right? So that's like the element of fire. It's going through the trials of fire, breaking down and being rebuilt, just like the phoenix. It's that whole process of alchemy, of disillusionment, and breaking down of the component parts and being rebuilt into something even stronger through the element of fire. So the east can be seen as fire, or it can be seen as air, depending on which system you use. It's also seen as the place of light. It's where the sun rises. The sun rises in the east, right? So the north is going to be symbolic of the dark time of day or winter. Now let's move to the south. The south is like where the high noon sun is. So that's when the sun is at its highest. So it does make sense for the south to be, fire. But in the astral system that I was just discussing, and what I've changed it to, is water. And I'll discuss other reasonings for doing so. And it's more for it's for me on a personal level. There's like certain reasons I'm doing it with a new system. I tried going back to the old way of doing it, the traditional Golden Dawn system, and it just doesn't feel right anymore. So I've really become accustomed to doing it the new way. But the south is usually going to be symbolic of, the element of fire, but I've changed it to water, and it is the high noon sun, and it represents the officer of a junior warden in a Masonic lodge. Whereas the east is the worshipful master. And I think in the Golden Dawn system, the east is the Hierophant. That's the officer of the east. Don't remember what it is in the south. Moving to the symbolism of the west. The west is traditionally water, which makes sense because of baptism. It's also representative of the setting sun. So there is that correlation too. So baptism, water, and the setting sun. But I also see it as the direction of retiring, retiring into the west. The east is the direction of initiation, of fire. And then the west is sailing into the west to the place of peace. It's like the retirement after the long hero's journey, so to speak. What else do I want to say about the direction of the west? Traditionally, that would be the second senior officer in a mystery tradition, is typically in the west. So in Masonry, that's the senior warden. Not sure what it would be in the Golden Dawn system, but yeah, that's the second. So from the senior officer down to the, you could say like the subordinate officer, it would go worshipful master, senior warden, and junior warden. So, and these people, when you're in that station, you don't keep that position forever. They interchange usually every year. Different people take on different stations. So it's not like one person has like more power than anybody else per se. It's just there's more responsibilities you're taking on. I think that's something that is like heavily misunderstood. It's not like more power or more knowledge or any of those sorts of things. It's just you're taking on that role. You're taking on that archetypal role in the ceremony, in the initiatory structure of whatever mystery school it is that you're involved in. So the West, typically seen as a place symbolic of water, of baptism, but it can also be the area of, retiring into the West. It's like the Grey Havens in Lord of the Rings. So the East was initiation, being transformed through fire, and then I see the West as the element of air in the new system. There's also an angelic correspondence of why I changed up the system too, which I will get to shortly. Now I do have this piece of paper right here with these toy dragons, which I got for my son. But here, this is the East. So this dragon represents Raphael. This is Michael, obviously, the red dragon. The green dragon is a little bit smaller than the others, but that's not to downplay Uriel's significance in all of this. So that's the North. And then here's the West with the blue dragon representing Gabriel. So this is your traditional setup. This dragon should be on the right side if the camera is, accurate to, what I'm actually showing you. Gabriel's there, there's Michael, and then there's Uriel. So this is the traditional ceremonial magic setup or layout of the elements. So there you have Earth, winter, moving to spring in the East, coming around to summer, and then to fall, and then back to winter. So, this traditional system, it does make a lot of sense, but I'm going to go ahead and change it up now to where it is if we go on working from more the astral level of reality. And then there's going to be another symbolic significance to all of this, which I'm going to show you. Okay, so now we have, instead of Raphael in the East, being correlated with that, if this were to be a temple, the senior officer would have been honestly Raphael, but usually, the oldest archangel down from Lucifer being the original archangel, quote unquote, and then Michael would actually be the next oldest. So now Michael, as you can see, I'm going to have to hold this dragon up, but so Michael is now in the East, that fire as the worshipful master, in that station. Then you have Raphael on this side. Here, go back a little bit. There's Raphael in the west as the senior warden. And so this is the archangel's ages going from oldest to youngest. From what I've heard of the mythology, it's Michael, it's Raphael, and then it's Gabriel. So you have the worshipful master, the senior warden, and the junior warden down here in the south as water. And then in the north, you still have earth. Earth remains the same. So I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, you know, if you're not super like into masonry, or if you're not like, you don't study like the way the officers are set up in different mystery schools. But for me personally, it makes a lot of sense. And then when it comes to like circumambulations and things of that nature, circumambulating is moving in a circular direction, you know, around a sacred object, which is usually located at the, you know, in the middle of a temple, which could be a volume of sacred law or something to that effect. And so usually you would circumambulate in like a clockwise fashion, with your right hand always being the one that's closest to the altar, right? And usually clockwise circumambulation is invoking energy. So it's building up energy, and it's more projective energy. It's more masculine energy. It's more pushing energy outwards. Whereas I think at Mecca, or is it the giant black cube, if I'm not mistaken, at Mecca, I believe they actually circumambulate counterclockwise, which counterclockwise, it's actually more of a magnetic charge. So you're actually pulling energy in. It's more feminine when you're moving in a counterclockwise fashion. And usually counterclockwise energy represents more death, or it represents more more of that negative charge type energy, quote unquote. Or like funerary rites. I think in like funerals and stuff, they move like counterclockwise. So as you can see, the east is this place of transformation and fire. And I face east if I'm just gonna lay this dragon down. He won't stand up. But you can see how the layout is. Try one more time. Nope, they just doesn't want to stay. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. So there's the dragons. East is the place of fire, transformation. And then I've had experiences where I, you know, peer into the west, and as the west being corresponded to the element of air, and really like moving through that realm, and I don't know, I had a deep, profound connection with that compass direction. It was a very interesting experience. So I see the west as the place of retiring, you know. It's where the soul kind of takes a rest after the great work is accomplished in the east. But what's interesting about the west too is the west is actually, I think in the draconian tradition, or the darker tradition, the west is actually the place of significance. Like the west corresponds to the darker mysteries, from what I've heard, which, you know, the west could be symbolic of like the more primordial feminine in a way, maybe, while the east represents more masculine type fire. So that could be a correlation with the west being water as well. But in this new system, I see it as these being the three archangels from oldest to youngest: Michael, Raphael, Gabriel. And then you've got Uriel up here. And I'm not sure if Uriel is the next, like, oldest, or how that works. But anyway, so I think I pretty much covered, like, everything I wanted to in the video. And we're not even 15 minutes in. So it's going to be just under a 15-minute video. So I think that's perfect. I think I conveyed pretty much everything I wanted to in this video. So I'm going to go ahead and end it there. I appreciate any and all of you that have been a part of this channel's growth. And, you know, I hope I've been able to teach you something. I hope you found value. So I'm going to continue to post when I can, and I'm just enjoying this thing called life. And you know, new beautiful things are going to manifest, I think, for everyone really soon. This winter's been, you know, it's got seasonal depression. You got all those things going on. This last year's been really rough, but I think it's going to be time really soon for all of us to, you know, break free of our cocoons. We've been in that isolation period for so long. It's time to finally bloom and blossom into that butterfly, you know, that we've been waiting to blossom into for so long. So I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. So Take care, everyone. Peace and blessings. And until next time, I will see you all later.